But we want to begin with that breaking news because it has been a turbulent year for the U.S. aerospace giant Boeing. Its marquee plane, the 737 MAX, has been grounded for months after two fatal crashes. And today, the company's CEO, Dennis Muilenburg, was forced out of his job. Now, airlines all over the world grounded the 737 MAX after 346 people were killed in two separate crashes. Reports blame new software aboard the aircraft that the pilots did not know about. Boeing has been accused of trying to cut corners. And then last week, a Boeing space capsule went off course in orbit during a test launch to the International Space Station. Well, today, Boeing's board of directors said the company needed a change in leadership. And for more, we're now reaching out to Leslie Josephs. She covers the airline industry for CNBC Network, joins us right now. So, Leslie, thank you for being with us. Could this move improve Boeing's relations with regulators and the flying public?
That's possible. We have to remember also that with this story, it seemed like nothing could make relations any worse. So bringing in Calhoun, which is someone who has had decades of experience battling crises. He was at GE for many years, especially in the aircraft unit. Bringing in someone who's that seasoned and is also kind of like some fresh blood, maybe not to Boeing because he was on the board, but in the day-to-day operations, that should calm some people down. But relations have been pretty damaged, both with airlines, with the flying public, and of course with the FAA, as we've seen over the last few weeks.
You talk about the flying public, and I want to pick up on that point because I also wonder about relationship with airlines. You know, carriers in this country, among many around the world that have had to suspend and change their flights on 737 MAXs as a result of all of this. What is the impact on them with this change in CEO?
Well, airlines have already lost hundreds of millions of dollars because of this crisis. And now that it's going to go into 2020 and they don't have any visibility of when the aircraft is going to fly again, that bill is running up on Boeing. Boeing is going to have to compensate those airlines. So we don't really know when this is going to end, but the counter is ticking.
What's also interesting in all this is the relationship that Boeing has with regulators in the United States, namely the FAA. How does this change at the top change that relationship?
Well, one thing to remember there is the FAA got a new leader back in August, Steve Dickson, a former Delta pilot. And both the FAA and Boeing are on the defensive. So what we've seen from this new leader at the FAA is repeated public comments, which are very rare, kind of like a public admonishment of Boeing, saying, we are in charge of this process. You do not call the shots. Stop telling investors, stop telling the public that this plane is going to fly by the end of the year or gain approval to fly by the end of the year. But you do have to remember that the FAA is also trying to show that it has authority and is independent of the manufacturer. It's been criticized for months for being too cozy.
And you mentioned David Calhoun, the man that will step in now as CEO. Tell us a bit more about him.
So he's not new to Boeing. I mean, he was on the board. He was named chairman. They separated Dennis Muilenburg's roles back in October, which was kind of the first, some might even call it a slap on the wrist because they let Muilenburg keep his job. But he's been on our air before. He kind of exudes a little bit more warmth and sort of like the squishier skills that Muilenburg has been accused of maybe not showing enough warmth or enough sympathy with the victims, empathy with the victims, these 346 people. So we should expect a little bit more of that. It's a change. The victims' families that I have spoken to have said they wanted Muilenburg out for a really long time. And Calhoun is a seasoned executive who has had to deal with everything from 9/11 to other scandals to this.
Leslie, thank you. Appreciate you starting off our coverage this hour. That is Leslie Josephs, who covers the airline industry for CNBC. Now, we want to stay on this story because we also have some reaction, and this is from a family member of someone who was killed in the Ethiopian Airlines crash. This man lost his wife, a flight attendant aboard the 737 MAX plane that ended up crashing that day. And in a statement, this is what he is saying about this change of leadership. He says, this is something that we've been asking and struggling for quite some time. The CEO reluctantly and deliberately kept the aircraft in service after the Lion Air crash. The Ethiopian crash was a preventable accident.